and welcome to Not Now in Theaters. My name is Will Turntail, I'm a writer and film fan from California. This episode is all about Knightriders. No, not the TV show with the talking car. It's a George Romero movie about the oddest kind of Renaissance fair. A traveling troupe who jousts each other on motorcycles instead of horses. Yes, that sounds odd, and it is. But this movie is a very personal one to George Romero, the so-called godfather of the zombie film. So while it's very unorthodox, it's very personal to one of independent filmmaking's best-known creators. So I'm excited to get into what's a very unique and unadulterated movie with you. Before we start, a reminder that making films is hard, and you have to respect that, so any criticisms are meant to be constructive. This review will contain spoilers. I'll do my best to call them out for you before they come up. Okay, let's get into the movie. Knightriders 1981 review. George A. Romero drops the zombies for biker Renaissance fair. Not a zombie-related media out there fails in some way to tip its hat to George A. Romero. The father of the zombie film, directed the original Night of the Living Dead, 1968, and follow-ups Dawn of the Dead, 1978, and Day of the Dead, 1985, amongst a career of other horror films. But Romero wanted to prove he could break out of these horrific confines and tell a different story. His answer? Knightriders. No, not the 80s TV show with Knight Rider, complete with prime David Hasselhoff and a talking computer car. Like #van life, but with a hardcore 1980s slant, Romero's story follows a band of outsiders who run a traveling Renaissance fair, almost like an independent pro wrestling organization. Don't worry, it gets a little weirder. Following the Arthurian code, the knights compete for the crowd by jousting or battling hand to hand. But instead of horses, motorcycles are their trusty steeds. Written, directed, and edited by Romero, this dramatic fantasy effort is said to be semi-autobiographical. With all this creative control, let's examine how Romero's zombie genre jailbreak shaped up. So is Knightriders a good movie? The plot of Knightriders. After visions of a blackbird, King Billy and Queen Lynette wake up and join the rest of their traveling troupe. The day's program proceeds with a jousting competition for a lively and attentive audience who revels in the feats of the performers. But after the performance, the tensions rippling through the group bubble over. Local law enforcement Sheriff Riley shakes down the company for money. Sir Morgan threatens a coup d'etat, believing he should be king. And Billy struggles to recover from yet another injury. With the group fraying, a promoter, Bontempi, approaches Sir Morgan and anyone willing to leave for a lucrative deal. With the company split, a final battle looms between Billy and Sir Morgan's supporters. Who will come out on top? And walking you through the cast of this fine film, King Billy is played by the one and only Ed Harris. Queen Lynette is played by Amy Ingersoll. Sheriff Riley is played by Bingo O'Malley. And Sir Morgan is played by, of course, Tom Savini, a regular of George Romero movies, whether he's acting or doing makeup and things. And then you've got Bontempi, who is Martin Ferrero. You can read the rest of the main cast here in the transcript. A fun fact about the movie, authors Stephen and Tabitha King make cameos in the film. This, I think, is because they are friends with George Romero, but also I think they were all working on Creepshow at the time and hanging around the set, and I think that's why they just stepped into the movie. Okay, so now that you know the plot, why don't we talk about what I liked about this movie? First up, it's Ed Harris as King Billy, and that adds 3 points. We are kept from the details of King Billy's origins, but his motivation is clear. He believes in his principles, like not shaving his mounds of nappy chest hair. He refuses to take a day off, despite needing stitches to close a ghastly wound between his neck and shoulder. Hell-bent on staying an outsider, he keeps the troupe clear of promotional opportunities and living by a mock Arthurian code. He's so extreme, he refuses to sign an autograph for a wide-eyed kid. The boy wants him to John Hancock a motorcycle magazine with Billy's picture. Billy objects because it lumps him alongside famous stunt rider Evel Knievel. When challenged by Queen Lynette for not indulging the child fan, he yells, "I'm not trying to be a hero, I'm fighting the dragon!" In his first starring role, Harris's King Billy is a bit wild in the eyes when ranting, yet otherwise graceful. He gives knowing nods. He watches stoically when the group performs, showing confidence and conviction. Disaffected and determined to stay true to his code, you wonder if Billy represents Romero's feelings of entrapment within the film industry. He's a fascinating character, and Harris's tempered performance works. And then there's Merlin, which adds another point. Merlin is the band's licensed doctor. He tends to anyone wounded in the mock jousts, or even passers-by who got too close to the action. And he adds a mystical quality to the film, quietly tending to King Billy's injury while seemingly prophesizing to him. He's more shaman than a physician, with his black butterfly facial tattoos, golden earrings, and a long coat. A mystic, he blows a harmonica and tells a resting Billy the tale of King Arthur. The group's spiritual guide, he forms a deep bond with Billy, a conscience character who muses philosophically and keeps him on course. Next, we have characters Pippin and Punch, which adds a point. The announcer of the company, Pippin, is suspected of being gay. Yet, rather than mocking or disapproving, the troupe is frustrated that he hasn't come out openly. Accepting a homosexual character is pretty novel for early 1980s films, and the character even goes on to find love with Punch. Credit to the film for this inclusive attitude. And now for Billy's destiny, which is worth 2 points. And a spoiler alert, this section will ruin the film's excellent conclusion. Use the chapter skip if you don't want to hear it. The most entertaining part of this movie isn't the concluding battle between Morgan and Billy's supporters. While that seems a fitting moment to end the movie, the film finishes Billy's character arc. After losing his crown, Billy takes off with his new Indian companion, tying up loose ends. He beats Sheriff Riley as retaliation, avenging his comrade Riley assaulted, just as he threatened to do earlier in the film. He finds the boy who wanted his autograph, interrupting the kid's classroom to hand over his sword to him. Then Billy gets back on his bike and, feeling the weight of his injuries, begins hallucinating about riding a horse like an actual medieval knight. He runs smack into a semi-truck and is killed. Narratively, it's perfect. Reminiscent of the ending to the classic movie Vanishing Point. Double spoiler, Billy's only escape from society and into fantasy seems to be death. For the mock noble king, it's an honorable end, thought-provoking end. So now let's get into what I didn't quite like about the movie. First, it's too long, which removes 2 points. I love when directors get ample time to tell their stories, but Knightriders is 145 minutes long. That's the runtime of multi-generational family epics, not nitro-fueled Renaissance fairs. And there are some needless scenes. For example, 2 bikers inexplicably try to steal some of the group's gear and are chased down. It's not an exciting sequence that helps advance the plot or fill out the characters. Lastly, the pacing stalls. For example, the opening sequence, in which the troupe prepares for and then performs for a rowdy crowd of shorted beer swillers, lasts the first approximately 40 minutes. 20 to 25 minutes would have been enough to introduce the audience to the performer's talent and set the stage for the dramatic conflict. And then there's how the film is too literal, which takes away 2 points. This film is at its best when Billy and Merlin contemplate the nature of his destiny, or in the final act, where Billy completes his knight's tasks. Unfortunately, much of the movie focuses on the group's infighting, like the world's strangest episode of VH1's Behind the Music. The film had the potential to go in provocative directions. For example, had Billy been hallucinatory, his followers more like a cult who believes they are Arthurian knights in a modern setting? What a film it could have been. I get that it's seen as a symbolic representation of George Romero's frustrations with Hollywood, but I would have preferred more of that being a loose logic for the movie, not necessarily seemingly its point. The mythos that comes in at the end is where the fun starts to happen, and I wanted more. So adding it all up, Knightriders scores 3 points. On my scale of let's not watch, should I watch, or go watch this movie, that is going to squeak it into should I watch territory. If you love George A. Romero and are curious about this non-horror passion project, watch Knightriders to complete your Romero Films punch card. And if you're a fan of cult or oddball movies, there might be something in this one for you as well. Otherwise, I don't recommend this film. I can't put it in those so good it's underappreciated, so bad it is revered, or so off the wall it's thought-provoking categories. The stunt work must have been difficult and dangerous, but it won't awe you. Jousting by motorbike is more novel than exhilarating. The final act gets delightfully interpretive, but we needed more. Credit to Romero for branching out creatively, but I couldn't quite get into this journey. The legacy of Knightriders. So what's the legacy of Knightriders? Well, fans of Romero, it is said, can clearly see this movie as a representation of his life in Hollywood. Look at King Billy. He lives outside of the rules of society. He doesn't want to sign autographs for kids for his impressive stunt work, maybe as a parallel to how Romero may not have always loved doing those zombie movies. And Romero, it is known, had a dedicated group with him making his films out in Pittsburgh, which is not all that different from Billy here having his own group of knights. And then there's the film's antagonists, like the cops and other people who try to shut them down. You can infer them as the studios that Romero didn't quite like the working relationship with. His whole movie, you could say, is just uncompromising on everything. It's long, it's not going to cater to commercial interests, it's there as Romero wants it to be. And for that, it deserves a piece of legacy as well. Like other Romero movies, yes, this one was filmed in the Pittsburgh metro area. So what's really strange here is that Romero originally wanted the movie to be a period piece, but then came up with the whole Renaissance fair and motorcycles idea. But you wouldn't know it. For whatever reason, this film was released April 10, 1981, the same day as John Boorman's Excalibur, very much a mythical story of King Arthur. I can only imagine this King Arthur double dip did not help the movie's performance. For star Ed Harris, this was an early film role that helped pave the way for his career. He had been a television and stage actor, but this was just his third film role. It would be followed by teaming up with Romero again on Creepshow, but then landing his big breakthrough role in The Right Stuff as astronaut John Glenn. And of course, he's gone on to Academy Award and Primetime Emmy Award nominations. I would imagine you have to know who Ed Harris is, right? The Rock, The Abyss, The Truman Show, and Apollo 13, just to prove big Ed Harris movies don't always start with the. The film is, of course, a bit of a cult movie, though not a major one. You can find physical media releases of the movie to help prove that. Shout Factory released it on Blu-ray in November of 2013 with some extras. So according to IMDb trivia, if you think this film is too long, the original cut is rumored to have ran 17 hours. Yeah, I can't imagine sorting through all that footage to trim it down. This truly has to be a labor of love for Romero. And we mentioned the TV show Knightrider, with a space in the middle there and the talking car. Well, that came out in 1982, just a year later. So there was supposedly a payment made to the producers of the movie so that the name could be used in the TV series. Okay, that's all I have for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. And if you haven't seen it yet, I hope you'll check out Knightriders. And if you have seen it, what do you think? Is the whole thing with King Billy something different than how I interpret it? You can reach out and let me know on Blue Sky using the link in the transcript, or just search for Will Turntail. And if you like this episode, would you please take a minute or two to leave me a review or rating on this podcast if you haven't done that already? A few people have rated it before, and I appreciate it. It makes a massive difference. Or if you're listening on YouTube, hit that like button and subscribe. New episodes of this podcast come out on Thursdays. And by the way, I am open to suggestions if there's a particular movie you think I should make an episode about. There aren't too many rules about which films I pick, just understanding that we don't do films everybody knows, like Jurassic Park or something. Next week's episode will be either The Mist or Showdown in Little Tokyo. The Mist is that Frank Darabont Stephen King adaptation from 2007 about horrible creatures showing up, keeping people locked in a grocery store. Regular listeners to this podcast will know I have put off making an episode about that movie for months because it's bleak, and I'm just still not in the mood to confront that. Yeah, it's almost like a running joke that I keep mentioning The Mist. But yes, it's still on my list. It will happen. But I think next week's episode is far more likely to be Showdown in Little Tokyo. I've been watching Brandon Lee's movies, the ones he appeared in before his breakthrough yet untimely death, The Crow. And Showdown in Little Tokyo is Brandon Lee's first American film, which he actually doesn't star in. It's a Mark L. Lester movie, the guy who made some over-the-top 1980s films, and it stars none other than, oh yes, the hulking mass known as Dolph Lundgren. The movie did poorly back in its time, but has evolved into a throwback pick for fans of retro buddy cop films. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about with that movie. Things like Dolph Lundgren running around in Japanese clothes and speaking Japanese, duels with samurai swords that end with spinny wheels and fireworks, and one of the oddest lines you will ever hear in a film, ever. Like it or loathe it, it's gonna be a lot of fun to unpack that wacky movie. So join me next week to discuss Showdown in Little Tokyo. And hey, if you want to watch it in preparation for the episode, go for it. I don't know if this show is to inform you about movies you should see, or actually just give you a perspective on movies you already like. I think either is fine, so check the movie out if you haven't seen it, and see how the episode grabs you. This podcast episode is production copyright of Overrigged Media, LLC, located in Sacramento, California. Reference photos linked in the transcript are copyrighted by the Internet Movie Database. This review's factual information was gathered through online sources like Wikipedia, IMDb, or interviews. Misrepresentations and errors are possible, but unintentional. The introduction music was Neon Laser Horizon by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. The exit music and additional music, they're also by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com, also licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. The names of those tracks are Voxel Revolution, BitQuest, and Proto Funk. See you next time.